No, Leland Miller.
Right there.
But tonight, we, the women of the family, would like to share a few things with you that maybe you don't know about the Leland Miller we all know and love.
Ready, girls?
Yes.
Oh, Leland Miller, he ain't what he used to be. Ain't what he used to be. Ain't what he used to be. Oh, Leland Miller, he ain't what he used to be. He used to be
A boy. You know, maybe rambunctious is not the word that comes to your mind when you think about Leland. But I think when he was a kid, I think he was a handful. And I think he started out pretty young. I mean, when he took a nap, he used to crawl out the window. You know, he was that kind of a kid. Because his dad worked on ranches and his grandfather owned one, he spent a lot of time on ranches. So one day, there was something going on in the corral, and there was a lot of people standing around watching whatever it was that was going on. And they were standing kind of back, out of the way, kind of up against the fence, you know, so they wouldn't be where they shouldn't be. And Leland was outside the corral because I'm sure he'd been told that's where he was supposed to be. He was probably 3 or 4 years old at the time. So he wanted to see what was going on. So he climbs up the outside of the corral, and when he gets to the top, he peed on everybody.
Dad?
Then there was another time when his Uncle Ernest, he was with his Uncle Ernest, and he said something to him that he really shouldn't have said. And he knew he needed to get out of there. And he also knew that the very highest place, the very safest place in the entire ranch was the top of that old windmill, because he looked up there and he knew that that was the very safest place there was. So of course he runs as fast as he can, climbs up the windmill. Well, Ernest just reached up, grabbed him by the foot, yanked him down, and that was probably one of the lickings he got when he was a kid.
licking?
Oh, Leland says he got his mouth washed out.
Yeah.
Finally, the day came when it was time for him to start school. And so one day, he goes to school and he has a new pocket knife. And of course, he goes into the restroom and he sees those stalls, and he sees that somebody's been scratching things, you know, on the side of the stalls like they do. So he takes out his new pocket knife and he scratches F-U-C-K. And then he signs it, L-M.
Oh, Grandpa!
Ready, girls?
Oh, Leland Miller, he ain't what he used to be. Ain't what he used to be. Ain't what he used to be. Oh, Leland Miller, he ain't what he used to be. He used to be a
Romantic. Now, maybe you have a hard time thinking of Leland as being romantic. But you have to keep in mind his idea of romantic is probably not the same as yours. For example, our first date. He called me up and he invited me to go to this barbecue that was being given in honor of a couple that had gotten engaged. And before the evening was over, he says to me, you know, I called up all the girls I usually date, and they all turned me down, so I called you. And then there was the proposal. When we'd been going together for about a year, and I guess I hadn't really realized that we were quite ready to talk about getting married. One evening he says to me, my dad says I should marry you. And I do know a place where we could rent. So maybe you should tell your folks that we're going to get married. Because after all, you're the one that's got the money to pay the rent.
Oh, Grandpa!
Ready, girls?
Old Leland Miller, he ain't what he used to be. Ain't what he used to be. Ain't what he used to be. Old Leland Miller, he ain't what he used to be. He used to be a
farmer. Now, I always thought that I'd kind of like to marry a farmer because, you know, there's the animals and all those sorts of things. And when I realized I was going to marry one, I was really kind of pleased with myself. It turned out to be quite an adventure. The first place we lived was this little ranch, about 25 acres. It was in Sparks off Pyramid Way. And this ranch came with cats, about 20 cats. So of course the first thing he did was go out and shoot about 10 of them. You know, we've been married for a week and he's shooting the cats. Then one winter day he ran over the family dog. He fell off of He fell off of every horse, I think, that was on the place, except maybe Old Blue. We used to raise baby calves, and they would get the scours. And that's just a polite way of saying diarrhea, and I mean really major diarrhea. So when they were really sick, he'd bring them in the house, put them in the guest room, and you can imagine what that was like. Then we got a milk cow. You couldn't go anyplace because we had to milk the cow. And he decided we should have pigs. So we went and got 2 pigs. They got out, got in the neighbor's garage, tore open these big sacks of bark. We had to clean up that mess. But my very favorite story is the chicken story. You all know Leland does not ever, under any circumstances, eat chicken. But he also doesn't like chickens. In fact, he doesn't like anything that flies, period. We used to have a pet store, and we would sell birds. And if a bird got out, of course, he would lock himself in his office until we caught the bird. But anyway, this little ranch that we had came with chickens. And of course, right away he said, we're getting rid of those chickens. Except he liked eggs. So he decided that we wouldn't get rid of all the chickens, we'd just get rid of the ones that didn't lay eggs. So somebody told him that what you need to do is you catch the chicken and you try to stick 3 fingers up their butt. And if you can get 3 fingers up their butt, they're laying. The guy that told him that's probably still laughing. Anyway, we go out to the hen house, and of course Leland wasn't about to catch the chickens, that was my job. So I catch the chicken, I turn it around so the butt's facing in the right way, and he sticks the 3 fingers in the butt. Well, you can imagine the chaos in the chicken house that day. Finally, we came up, or he decided, I guess it was, that these 10 or so chickens weren't laying, so he put them in a gunny sack, tied the gunny sack, stuck them in the back of a pickup because he wasn't about to butcher the chickens. So he had found somebody that was willing to give him a good home. So he takes off down the highway with these chickens. Well, of course, no sooner did he get going than the chickens got loose. So then he's got chickens all over the roadway, and he certainly wasn't going to catch them. So I'm sure those chickens are now free-range chickens.
Oh, Grandpa!
Oh, and I do think he has a thing about pigs, because I'm going to tell you one more pig story. This one happened a long time after, and it has nothing to do with farming. But one Halloween, he decided to be Miss Piggy. So he puts on a full Miss Piggy mask and this dress, and he's got this little purse and some kind of shoes, and these big plastic blue boobs, you know, that he's got under his dress. And he and Tony Thompson went off trick-or-drinking. Well, of course, by the time they had had a little bit of that, they were feeling pretty good, so they went on down and they ended up at the Mine Shaft Bar. And there was a guy there who probably had had even more to drink than Leland and kept hitting on him, you know? Wanted to dance with him. So finally Leland said, okay, we'll dance. He gets up there with him. By the end of the dance, he says, "Those blue boobs rubbed my chest raw."
Old Leland Miller, he ain't what he used to be. Ain't what he used to be. Ain't what he used to be. Old Leland Miller, he ain't what he used to be. He used to be a
trucker. I never did think I was really excited about being married to a trucker, but it happened. So when he decided that it was time to get into trucking, of course, Leland believes in learning by doing. So he goes out and buys this truck, an 18-wheeler, great big truck. I don't think he'd ever been in one, leave alone driven one. So he finds his friend Andy Latonia, who gave him about 3 lessons on how to shift, hops in the truck and takes off for Lovelock with a load of hay. Well, of course, nobody told him about the brakes on the trailer, so he drugged the trailer all the way to Lovelock. By the time he got there, every tire was flat. Nobody told him that when you haul livestock, you need to take galoshes. And
What's a galoshes?
galoshes. So the first time he took galoshes, the first time he took livestock, came time to clean out the trailer. Well, all he had on was a pair of old cracked boots, of course, and by the time he got finished, his feet were not only wet, but they were green, and no place to take care of either one of those problems. They also didn't tell him that when you haul livestock, you don't want to pull up too close to other people's cars. So he had a few problems with that. Poop. So that was not real good. Then I think probably that first year he took down every gate, every post, every fence, every pole that he came to. Well, except the time that he was kind of ticked at this guy and he thought, I'm going to accidentally just sort of clip his gate as I go through. He missed that one altogether. And if you think going frontwards was a problem, going backwards was absolutely impossible. One of his first loads, he had a load of feed to take to California. So he gets down there and he's supposed to back up to this doorway and where this feed could be unloaded, and there's a guy on a forklift who's going to unload him. Well, after he'd been working at it for about an hour, the guy on the forklift just went to lunch.
Oh, Grandpa!
There's been a lot of changes in Leland's life, but there's one thing that in all the years has never changed.
Ready, girls? And that's the Grandpa